Alright folks, what is up? It is Hellfire-Gamer here, and today I wanted to talk about a new game I've been playing here called Cities Skylines. It's a city simulation game. It's actually been out for quite a while, about 2 years now, and I just picked it up for PlayStation 4 here not too long ago, and I wanted to, I guess, make a quick video here to sort of describe some of the things about Cities Skylines that I wish I had known when I started versus what I know now, and etc. Because when you hop into this game, it really doesn't tell you a lot about what to do. It doesn't really describe the interface beyond a few basic pop-up windows and things like that. So I wanted to make sure that I covered a lot of the finer points that I wish I had known. Now here I have loaded up a city, one of the first cities that I had started working on. This city actually failed later on. It basically just imploded on itself, and I will go over the reasons why that happened. You can kind of, in fact, see some clues here now, but in fact this is, when you first start, probably something close to what you might build right out of the gate. It's a simple grid layout city all the way over. It basically connects right from the highway. It has an industrial sector, a commercial sector right here in the center, some water pumps. Okay, so it's nothing too crazy here. In fact, it's just a small town at this stage. I loaded an earlier save so we could see what was going on. And I want to talk about why this failed and what I wish I had done before the fact. So, I guess to start out, when you start Cities Skylines, you won't have any of this, okay? Any of this town area. This town's all built up, and it's built up using something called zones. So down here on the bottom, we have a whole list of icons, and when you first start the game, a lot of these will be grayed out. They'll be grayed out until you get to certain population milestones. So right under the bus icon down here, you can see a person. It says 4,082. That is the number of people in my town right now, and the plus 50 is the amount of people coming in. Okay, if that's positive, that's good. If it's negative, obviously, you're people leaving your town every day, and that's not very good at all. So, it's positive here. I have a population of about 4,000, and if you hold the triangle button, okay, again, I'm on PlayStation 4, so keep that in mind. You hold the triangle button, you'll get this radio wheel here. If you use your left analog stick, you can scroll around to these different radial menu options, and if you come down here to milestones, okay, you'll see there's actually quite a list of milestones here. My next milestone is at 5,500 citizens for this town here. If I scroll back through, we see the first milestone you want to get to is at 500. 500 people, you unlock garbage, healthcare, education. Okay, you unlock some taxable services, you unlock loans, which, believe it or not, is fairly useful. At 1,000 you get another one, 1,500, 2,600, and so on. Alright, you get a good chunk of money for those as well. They give you nice little reward incentives. And that will basically be what drives your city forward. As your population grows, you're going to get more and more buildings, and it will let you build bigger and better things, because from the start, you really don't have a lot of things to build. All of these options are locked out. You really just have some basic roads here, and that's about it. So, we're going to cover what to do at the start of the game. Alright, the first things first, right here, you will just start out with a highway interchange. It will come off and it will dead end right past that dashed gray line there. That dashed gray line is the boundary of your city building area. Okay, for mine on this file, it's a little spread out because I've bought the surrounding tiles here. But in this case, it will just be one grid square, which is still a fairly sizable area. Now, first things first, when you get this highway interchange, and we'll do this, I will start a new file to show you what to do when you start, just on a basic level. Okay, don't do what I've done here. On this file, I immediately started building almost as close to this dashed line as possible, and it immediately has done something that's created a gridlock. Alright, all of these intersections, everywhere you have an intersection in this game, it's going to create traffic problems. You see all these stop signs here? Okay, and I have 1, 2, 3, 4, intersections within spitting distance of each other, and that really creates havoc for when emergency vehicles need to get across this intersection, and more so when heavy traffic from this industrial sector is trying to get out of my city. Everything in this industrial area has to come out here, and it has to go and export materials back onto the highway. So you want to leave yourself a little bit of space instead of building right up to that white line here. But that's beside the point. We will cover that later. When I first started here, I didn't realize how in-depth the city generation was. Okay, so if you hold triangle, and you come down to this thing that says Info Views, this is what we want to look at. It's Info Views. So first thing you see when you click on Info Views, we have a whole bunch of different options here to sort of see and view our city from different perspectives. This is really important. It's actually what I spend the majority of my time on when I'm building cities now. The first thing we see is electricity. This tells you your current power grid. Okay, this is really important. This is something I didn't quite understand when I first started the game, so if you're still starting out and you need to know how to run power to your cities, pay attention to this. Right? When you see blue buildings, that means they're good. It means they have as much power as they're going to need. If we drop our power consumption, you'll see some of them start to turn red. Okay, or it might be like a purple. It's kind of hard for me to tell. And they'll have a little lightning bolt symbol over their head. That means that they need power. They're not getting enough power generation. This dark blue area here, it's surrounding all of our buildings. That is the area of, I'm going to call it power creep. Okay? For power creep, that essentially means that electricity jumps without the need of power lines from one house to the next, as long as it is within this blue area. So there's no need to run all these power lines, these industrial power lines, all the way through your town. As long as these houses are appropriately spaced next to each other, all that electricity is going to flow along all of this blue area here. So as long as that blue area is touching everything, you're essentially in one power grid. And you can see here that all of that blue area is connected, except for this blue area over here, right? This blue area happens to be my starting power generation. I used a couple windmills in this file, and then I have a power pumping station, or a water pumping station, I should say, and some sewage runoff. And this all needs to be connected to the main power grid as well, otherwise none of this power is benefiting this power over here, right? I have 3 coal power plants that are producing the majority of the power for this town, and then I have a couple windmills here, but to connect them all, I needed to run some power lines. All you have to do to run power lines and get power onto the same grid is to place a power pole inside the blue area you want to transfer from, and then you run it along until you get to the next blue area that you're trying to transfer the power to. And as long as it is anywhere within that blue area, you now have connected the power grids. There's no need to run power lines, through this entire town, even though it would in real life have probably, power lines all throughout here. We don't have to worry about that, especially not these heavy-duty, high-voltage lines, okay? So we just have to run that to one blue area and call it a day, and that's what I've done there. So we just have one set of power lines, and then in the back, as this was expanding, you can see maybe I've got a few more power lines here just to jump it to these coal power plants. But that's, just about the gist of power generation. Make sure your city is blue. Make sure you have all of your power producing areas linked so you don't have multiple power grids. And that's about that. If you come over here to water, you'll see this is another kind of complex thing that Cities Skyline does. You have to actually run water for your entire town. Okay, this doesn't happen automatically. You have to run these water pipes. You can see here I've placed water pipes all throughout the city. You have water and sewage, both in the same line. Okay, and I've basically taken the approach of running these down every road. So every road I have water lines. And I don't know the exact distance. You can be pretty sloppy with water lines and have it still work. But I found a pretty safe approach is basically run one down every street and you will never have a problem. Okay, and as long as all of these are connected, and here at the end, god damn, what is this radio playing? Yes, the in-game radio, by the way, if you bought the DLC, it has music. We're going to shut that off for now because I'm trying to talk. Back to our info views. Alright. Now we can see the water lines again. As long as there is liquid flowing in these lines, it means they're working. If they're not working, they'll just be gray. But as long as this whole network is connected, and then it comes down here and it connects to your drains. Alright, my drains are right here. These are what these pipes are. You have a completed system. It's a full circuit. So, pumps connect to water pipes, connect to town, connect all the way back here to drains. That's how you run your water systems. Okay, and obviously as your city grows, you'll need to continue running more and more water pipes. This obviously was, I think I just started off with maybe this little block here, ran all my pipes, built a quick industrial center, ran some more pipes. I can't remember what I made first over here. We'll have to just sort of assume that I built this all up over time and ran more pipes as I went. So that's water pipes. If you keep coming down here, you'll see some useful info. I'm not going to quite cover all of this, but you can see your healthcare. Okay, if your citizens are sick, if there's an area where people are particularly prone to illness, you can see it on this map. And in fact, you can actually see that these are not the healthiest people here, the people living right next to the main highway. And it's kind of funny that I take note of this because there is a reason for that. Okay, we see this house right here, not the healthiest here, and I suspect as this entire system gets built up down this highway, you're going to start to see more and more illness pop up along the main highway. There's an outlier right here. I'll be honest, I'm not sure why those are. Okay, we're going to kind of ignore those because they're outliers. But there is a very good reason for why there are health issues with these houses here. There is crime mapping. Okay, we can see that the city is fairly low on the crime scale. That's good. I don't have a high crime city. Citizen happiness. Okay, we have a very unhappy citizen right here. But aside from that, most of our town is happy. We're at about 67% happiness. We can see our population. Alright, our population, we can see the breakdown of children's, teens, young adults, seniors, etc. And more importantly, we can see our employment rate. We want to try to keep our employment rate under 10%. Okay, and we're doing that here. We have about 6% unemployment. That means we have enough jobs for all the people that are coming into our city. We can see noise pollution. Okay, here I want to highlight why I've done some of the things that I've done. Most specifically, why I've sort of shuffled this industrial sector off to the side of my main town. And that is because it generates a ridiculous amount of noise. If I zoom out here, everywhere that is pink is going to be generating noise. So your highways are noisy, your main road is noisy, your commercial section here in the center is noisy. These windmills, right, they produce a lot of noise, so I sort of pushed them off to the side here, and then I ran the power over to the town, so I don't have a bunch of unhappy citizens. Our bus station here, that's pretty noisy. But our industrial sector is the noisiest thing about this town, and that's why I've pushed it off to the side. You want to try to separate your industrial sectors from your residential. That way people are not getting mad at you for all the noise you're generating. As far as transport goes, this will be later on. You don't have this from the start, but when you build a bus station, you can also generate public transit lines. Okay, and these public transit lines can earn revenue for your city. They charge fare for the buses, and I can see here I have two bus lines. I have a bus line for the north side and the south side, and they all run into this commercial district here in the center. And then they go back and they do their thing. And on this file it looks like we're only at 219 citizens per week, which is not very good, but that slowly grows over time. Now, this is a big thing too, okay? Pollution. This sort of ties in with our health issues. Anywhere that's brown is pollution. We have 9% ground pollution here, and everywhere in this residential sector is unpolluted, while our industrial sector is heavily polluted. Alright? So you want to try to keep your industrial sectors away from your residential sectors, so the sectors here, or you're going to end up with a lot of health issues, because as we remember, if I go back to health, we see that the houses here that are closest to my industrial sector are the unhealthiest, and that's because that's all that pollution. That pollution is creeping towards those houses here. So keep that in mind. If you're building houses next to industrial sectors, you're going to have to take into account here the pollution that you're going to be putting off, especially from these power plants. They really create a lot of pollution. Okay, and you'll see there's no pollution here, but I want to highlight this little brown speck here that is filling up the river. Okay, that's all my sewage runoff. Believe it or not, you actually pollute the river when you create drain pipes. That is critically important. If you see these arrows here on your river, these arrows here indicate the flow of the river. You want your runoff to be downstream from where you're pumping fresh water. Obviously, if you have the polluted water running off and you have your pumping stations down here, all you're going to be doing is pumping that polluted water right back into your citizens' taps, and you're going to make a very sick city. So, key rule, make sure you have your pumping stations upstream of your drainage sites. As long as you have that, you won't have to worry about all of this polluted runoff, which, by the way, does extend quite a ways. You can see here we still have some discoloration. Okay, and that continues all the way up here. So you're going to pollute the downstream for quite a ways. We can see our land value here. Obviously, in this town, there's probably not a lot of high value property. Our commercial sector looks like it is the highest value. And this house here, these row of houses that are closest to the industrial sector, are our lowest value property. Outside connections, all of our imports and exports for the majority are going to be in our industrial sector. Okay, we have some tourism sites in this town, mostly hotels. We have a spa and some type of drive-in eatery there. Okay, so we don't have much tourism in this town, but that's okay. You have another overlay, which is traffic. This is very important, and in fact, this is going to highlight why my town failed. Okay, traffic is probably the silent killer, I would say, of all cities in this game. When you build roads, it doesn't start off as bad. You have a low number of citizens, so you don't have to worry too much about what your traffic is doing. They won't block each other up. But as you grow your town and you get more and more people and you get into the thousands of people, you're going to start seeing some really congested roadways, and that's what happened to this town. I didn't have a lot of foresight when I built my initial entry off this interchange here, and what happened is it all bottlenecks right down into this road here. So everything trying to go up of the interchange and get onto this roundabout is crushing into this intersection right here. And as more and more people came in, it backed up and it backed up and it backed up, and eventually people just couldn't get off the highway. Alright, I had to completely tear out this intersection here and design it better. So make sure that when you design your roadways, you're designing for high volume, even if there's not high volume to begin with. Make sure that you are prepared for when the cars start coming in, you don't get this blockage that you're seeing here. Alright, any area that is green is low traffic. Obviously, any area that is red, you're going to see high traffic. And you especially see that here. All of this industrial traffic is coming in, it's turning off, and it's heading out to the highway. Same thing with this roundabout here. I have a 4-lane road going into a 2-lane roundabout, which was a very silly decision on my part when I first built this. Okay, so keep that in mind. If you're funneling in a large amount of traffic and you bottleneck it with a low volume road, you're going to get a traffic nightmare, even if it's a roundabout. So that's what happened to that roundabout there in this town in general. Garbage, that's a big thing. When your town grows, obviously you need a place to put all the trash. So I have 2 landfills here. That's pretty decent for a town of this size. Okay, and anywhere that is green, it means the garbage trucks can get to it efficiently. So, when you put landfills in, you'll have garbage trucks. They'll start going out and collecting trash. You want to make sure that you have easy access from the landfill to the rest of the town, because you're going to have a constant cycle of garbage trucks going in and out and in and out. Alright, when these landfills fill up, you can actually click on them. If you go to your inspector here on the left and you hit the X button, if you click on your landfill, you can see the amount it's full. In this case, it says it's 27% full. And if it gets close to capacity, you can actually empty this garbage truck to another facility, or this landfill. You can sort of shuffle all of the landfill contents off to another landfill or an incinerator. Later on if you want. Oh my. Excuse me. And that will resolve your traffic or your garbage crisis here, because in the beginning you're going to have to create a lot of landfills until you get the incinerator. But I'll hit circle, I'll go back to my info views, we'll cover a few more. Leisure, not so important right now. You can see basically the happiness and accessibility of your town based on the leisure buildings you put in. And it looks like I didn't really put in any leisure buildings in this town. It really doesn't affect much in a large town. In cities where there's a lot of hustle and bustle, you're going to want some leisure activities spaced here and there to keep your citizens happy. But for now, I'm not going to really worry about that. Heating, that's a big thing. On the lower right-hand corner of the UI, you can see the temperature. Celsius if you're a European, you can set it to Fahrenheit if you're American. I have mine set as Fahrenheit right now. And you can see all of the buildings that are heated, okay, or have the ability to be heated. Now, I don't have a single heating facility in this town. It's not so bad right now because we can see that it is March, right? But as we get into the winter months, we're going to want to upgrade these heating pipes. We're going to want them to be insulated pipes so they don't break and freeze. And then we're going to want to create some sort of heating plant so we can push heated water to all of our citizens, some geothermal power, and make sure that nothing freezes and pipes don't break. Otherwise, this city is going to be a nightmare. For terrain height, okay, this is a contour map. You can see the contour lines here that indicate different elevations. If you look at a lot of contour maps in real life, they look almost identical. Alright, so if you need to see different elevations, if things are flat, if you're looking for large flat areas, look for areas that don't have a lot of contours. Anywhere that has really, really tight contours like this, it means it's a steep elevation. Many changes in elevation until we get up and they start to get wider and wider, and it means it's getting flatter and flatter as we go. Road maintenance, right here, it's obviously not that big of a deal because it's a new file, but as your city progresses, you're going to see that your roads need maintenance more and more. Escape routes, they're really only a thing if you're playing around with the disasters. If you are a new player to this game, I would highly recommend turning off random disasters that really can just kill a brand new town. If a tornado rips through it and you're just started out, your entire city will have to basically be deleted and rebuilt. So if you're playing with disasters, be warned that can happen, and there's really nothing you can do about it in early game. So I think that about covers the various overlays, the important overlays. You have radio coverage, by the way. If you have radio stations, TV stations, you can push that coverage out here. There's really no need in the beginning to push out a radio station. I wouldn't worry about that too much. So that is the main status overlays. You can see here the pollution firsthand, all of this smog. Right, if I zoom over here in the real-time view, it's really, really foggy over in the industrial sector, and I have nice clear skies over in the residential. So keep that in mind too. Anywhere you have all of these smokestacks, anywhere you have industrial production, you're going to generate a lot of smog. And And until you start leveling up these buildings, leveling up your town, you're not going to have a lot of policies in place to control that smog. And anywhere you have smog, you're going to have sick citizens, so make sure you keep those away from your residential. What's another thing? Oh yes, I get asked a lot on the lower right-hand corner. There are 3 bars, okay? There's a green bar, a blue bar, and a yellow bar. The bars here, the 3 bars there, indicate what your citizens want. It's important to note that these are more just guidelines more than anything. If you chase these bars, you're going to just be building and building and building, and you're going to be expanding probably too fast for your own good. So keep that in mind. You want to control your expansion, get a nice profit going, and then expand as you have the money, rather than chasing the demand bars on the bottom. But what they represent are the zoning demands. So a lot of people think when you first view Cities Skylines is that all of these buildings, oh my god, did a person build them all individually? And the answer is no, they didn't. Okay, it's autonomous. The citizens themselves decide what is built where. You don't really have control of what buildings get put where. So, what I mean by that is, when you build in this game, you build by creating zones. That's what this icon is here to the right of roads. It's called zoning and districts. If I click the button on this, we see we have districts. I have a low-density residential zone. I have a low-density commercial zone. I have a low-density industrial zone. Well, I shouldn't say low-density. I have an industrial zone, and you also have an office space. We don't have the office space or our high-density zones unlocked yet because we don't have the milestones unlocked. However, if I click on one of these zones, we can see how a city is built. Now, within, we see we have grid squares here, and it might be a little hard to see if I'm mousing over. But in each zone, we have grid squares. Okay, from the roadways, you have 4 grid squares of space on either side of a roadway. So, I have 4 grid squares here, and 4 grid squares here, giving me 8 total grid squares to form this central block here. And I have basically told the game that in each of these individual squares, I want it to be zoned as residential. So it's pretty easy to do this. If you hover over it, you'll see it selects that entire area. If you want to select a finer area, you hold the triangle button. You can paint large areas, you can select individual squares, or you can do what I'm doing here, which is just fill an entire area. Normally I have it just filling an entire area for ease, and then I go back and I nitpick with the individual square tool. Okay? But you can select residential, and when you do, you'll see that your citizens will slowly start to build buildings in the areas that you've zoned. And the building types will be regulated by what type of zoning it is. So residential, you'll get housing and living spaces. Commercial, you'll get businesses, okay, anywhere you can earn money, employ these citizens that you have housed in your residential district. And then industrial, obviously you're going to have your imports and exports. Okay, that's what this yellow tiling means. So, obviously, if the green bar, if it's filling up, it means your citizens want more residential zones. The blue bar, if it's filling up, means your citizens want more commercial districts. And that yellow bar down at the bottom, if that's filling up, you need to zone some more industrial districts. Okay? And again, those are more like guidelines, but those are what your citizens want overall. And it sort of fluctuates, and right now it's fairly stable on my end. I can build a few more zones if I wanted to drive those bars down, but right now I'm at a part where I'm sort of content to sit here and just earn profit. Now I have the game paused right now. That's an important thing to note. If you want to pause and not earn upkeep costs, just hit the L3 button, click that left stick downwards, and it will pause all the activity in your city. So, that is the nitty-gritty of how you build a city, build roads, zone around roads, zone according to the demand bars on the lower right-hand corner. Pay attention to your power production. Okay, that's a big thing. Anytime you build more buildings, guess what? They need water, they need electricity. Make sure in your info panel that your electricity consumption is always lower than your electricity production. Okay, if it's not lower, you either need to build more plants here, or you need to drive electricity production upwards. And that's something I'm going to cover last here, which is the economy panel. This is pretty important. Okay, in the beginning, you don't have access to a lot of this, but you will as you continue with your city. First and foremost, on the right here, you can see your income versus expenses. You always want your income higher than your expenses. Otherwise, you're going to be bleeding money, and that is not good at all. So, don't bleed money. How I earn money in the beginning game is I tax the hell out of my residential zones. Obviously, you can see I have $6,000 of residential income here. Okay, I can actually squeeze some more income out of that if I tax them heavier. I'm not going to do that right now. Okay, I'm just going to keep those taxes at about 13%, but I can raise or lower these however high or low as I want. Obviously, if you get too high, your residents are going to complain. They might even leave, so keep that in mind. If I tab over to budget, this is important. Okay, this lets me produce more electricity. I have my electricity budget only at 90%. Okay, so I can still eke a little bit more power out of my grid before I need to build some more power plants. If I give that about 10 more percent, you'll see it jumps my power production up. Okay, and the same thing with here with my water consumption. I really don't need to be pumping a massive amount of water right now, so I have that at 75%. Same thing with garbage. I have these all ratcheted down based on the level of need of my town. So if you are generating a massive amount of expense on the right there with upkeep cost, dial back the budget that it has access to. Okay, it'll remove some of that expense at the cost of some of the efficiency of that unit, and that's okay. All right, small towns don't need full access to all of their resources. Okay, a lot of the times it's in way excess of what you actually need, so don't be afraid to dial that back to save some money. You also have separate budgets for day and night. If I hit the triangle button, okay, we can see that this is the budget set for night. Right now I have about the same for night and day. Okay, but in the beginning especially, you're going to be generating a lot more power during the nighttime than you are during the daytime. Okay, obviously everyone has to turn those light bulbs on during the night, and you're going to see a huge power jump at night. So, if you're wondering why that is, you might have to go in and change your budget day versus night. As you create more milestones, you get higher and higher in population. You'll be able to take out loans. Don't be afraid to take out loans in this game. It's not like a loan in real life where it's going to charge you a massive amount of interest. Okay, you'll see here it only charges 10% interest on a 60,000 loan. 66,000 is all you have to pay back, and that's really not that big of a deal. Okay, it only generates $253 as a weekly cost, and you have a payment plan on it for 260 weeks. That is not days, that is weeks. Okay, so keep that in mind here. You see this timer here on the lower left. That is progressing by the day. So that should cue you in on just how long of a time you have to pay off a loan that says, for example, 260 weeks to pay it back. And you can pay it back at any point beforehand, okay, and it's not a big deal. So I would highly recommend, if you're struggling for cash and you have access to some of these loans, don't be afraid to take the loan, generate some good income, earn that money back after you create some more services that your citizens want, and you generate some more income, and then pay that back when you get the time. So I took out many loans to get this starting town going. So don't be afraid to do that. Alright, and if you want a greater breakdown of income and expenses, you can see it over here under the income and expenses tab. Honestly, I think that's a bit of overkill at the moment for small towns. It has a tendency to confuse new players to this genre. So if you want the overview, which I would recommend, just tab over to any of these other tabs and just look on the right hand side here, down at your totals. Alright? Really all I want to see is my total residential income, my residential, or my commercial income, and my industrial income. That's all I care about. So, as long as that's higher than my total expenses, I'm good. If I need to lower my expenses, the key thing is you'll look on that expense list, you'll see what is costing me the most amount of money, and odds are it's usually electricity, and you see, can I lower that at all to cut my expenses? If the answer is no, go to the second highest number on that list, see if you can lower that, and so on and so on. Alright. So that is how you get yourselves out of the negatives of a new city and you boost yourself into earning some tiny profit. Okay. I'm not going to cover ideal city building because honestly I consider that to be the joy of Cities Skylines. I could do a series, and in fact I may a little bit later here, on beginning city building and what works for a starting city and what doesn't. But I think covering the UI here and what to expect as a new player to Cities Skylines is probably more in the spirit of the game at the moment than just giving you a cookie cutter starting city to start out with. So, I wanted to cover the UI, some of the major mechanics with the game, and how to sort of work around those as you start. And then hopefully, when you start a new file, you will figure out the joys of city building for yourself, and you'll see what works and what doesn't. And if you have any questions, obviously, feel free to drop a comment. I'm not heartless. I will do my best to answer any questions that you have. And keep in mind here, folks, if you see this, I will just note that this is not an ideal city design, okay? So if you're looking at this video and you're like, oh man, it looks so cool, I'm going to copy that, just keep in mind that at about the winter month here, maybe 3 or 4 months down the road of in-game time, this whole city and its expansion, which I built on this side, actually ended up imploding, and I deleted and started over. So, if you can think of a way to improve it, which I can think of many ways to improve this, go right ahead. Otherwise, have fun creating your own cities, and enjoy the game, guys. Thanks.